What if the fairy tales about giants were actually a terrifying part of our real history? Imagine walking through the woods and discovering a footprint that is 3 feet long, or looking up to see a person as tall as a house. To most of us, this sounds like a movie plot, but the ancient world tells a much darker story. From the Greeks and the Norse to legends in the Americas, every culture speaks of giants who once ruled the earth. But the most mysterious records of all are found in the Bible, which speaks of a race called the Nephilim, beings of incredible power and men of renown who changed the world forever. As Corrie ten Boom once said, "Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God." In a world that was once filled with shadows and giants, humans had to learn that no matter how big the enemy looked, the Creator was always bigger. The mystery begins in the very first book of the Bible. In Genesis 6:4, it says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward." This verse tells us 2 things. First, it tells us that these giants were real. Second, it tells us that they didn't just show up once. They were part of the ancient world for a long time. People who saw them were terrified. In the book of Numbers 13:33, the Hebrew spies gave a report about the land they were exploring. They said, "We saw the Nephilim there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." Can you imagine feeling like a tiny grasshopper standing next to a human being? That is how big and powerful these creatures were. There's a famous quote that says, "History is written by the winners, but legends are born from the truth." The Nephilim secret is one of the biggest mysteries in human history. Who were they? Where did they come from? Some people think they were just very tall men, but many ancient texts suggest they were a mix of the human and the divine. They were a bridge between heaven and earth that was never supposed to exist. Today, we are going to dig into the old records. We are going to look at the sons of God and the daughters of men. We are going to find out why these giants caused so much trouble that the whole world had to be washed clean. Get ready to meet the giants of the ancient world. They are more than just a myth. They are a missing piece of our history. To understand the Nephilim, we have to look at where they came from. The Bible gives us a very strange clue in the book of Genesis. It says that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful. It says they took these women as wives. For hundreds of years, people have argued about what this means. Some teachers think the sons of God were just good men from the family of Seth. They think the daughters of men were women from the family of Cain. But many ancient believers had a different idea. They believed the sons of God were actually watchers. These were angels who were sent to guard the earth but chose to disobey God. This second idea comes from the book of Enoch and other ancient writings. It explains why the children of these couples were not normal humans. If 2 regular people have a baby, the baby is a regular human. But if a powerful spirit being and a human have a baby, the result is something completely different. This is how the Nephilim were born. They were a hybrid race. They had the physical bodies of men but the strength and height of something supernatural. This is why they were called the men of renown. They were like the superheroes or demigods we see in ancient Greek myths. They were faster, stronger, and much larger than anyone else on the planet. There's a powerful quote about this that says, "The Nephilim were a bridge that was never meant to be built. Their existence was a violation of the laws of nature. They were a mixture of things that God had intended to keep separate. This is why their presence caused so much fear." Imagine a world where the leaders are not just mean kings, but literal giants who cannot be defeated in battle. The Bible tells us that because of this, the world became full of violence. The Nephilim were not here to help humanity. They were here to rule over it. Their origin story is a warning that when the spiritual and the physical worlds get mixed up in the wrong way, it leads to a very dark path. What was life actually like when giants walked the earth? It wasn't like a fairy tale with friendly giants. The Bible tells us that during the time of the Nephilim, the world became a very dark and scary place because these beings were so much stronger than regular humans. They took whatever they wanted. They didn't follow human laws. They were like hunters, and the rest of humanity was like their prey. The book of Genesis 6:11 says, "Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence." This violence wasn't just small fights. It was a total breakdown of society. The Nephilim used their great size to bully everyone around them. They were like a shadow that covered the whole world, making it impossible for regular people to live in peace. Some people believe that the Nephilim are the reason we see giant stone buildings from the ancient world that seem impossible to build. In places like Baalbek or Egypt, there are stones that weigh hundreds of tons. Even with our modern machines, it is hard to move them. Some historians wonder if these men of renown used their superhuman strength to move these rocks. While we don't have a video of them doing it, the legends say that giants built cities that were meant to last forever. They wanted to leave a name for themselves. They wanted everyone to remember how big and powerful they were. A famous quote says, "The pride of a giant is as tall as his head." They didn't want to serve God. They wanted to be gods. But this pride led to their downfall. The Nephilim were not just physically big, they were spiritually empty. They filled the world with corruption, which means they spoiled everything they touched. They taught people how to be cruel and how to forget about the Creator. This is why the Great Flood was necessary. It wasn't just because people were being bad. It was because the human race was being changed into something it wasn't supposed to be. God saw that the world was being ruined by these giants and the chaos they brought. He decided to hit the reset button. The flood was a way to wash away the violence and the giants so that the world could start over with a simple, faithful man named Noah. The age of the Nephilim was a time of great power, but it was also a time of great darkness. One of the biggest mysteries in the Bible is how giants appeared again after the great flood. If the water covered the whole world and only Noah's family survived, how did the giants come back? The Bible gives us a hint in Genesis 6:4 when it says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward." This means that even after the flood, the giant gene, or the same spiritual problem, happened again. We start to see new names for these giants, like the Rephaim, the Anakim, and the Emim. When the Israelites were traveling to the Promised Land, they were terrified because the cities were walled up to heaven and the people living there were huge. They felt like they were fighting monsters, not just men. One of the most famous giants after the flood was a king named Og of Bashan. The Bible tells us in Deuteronomy 3:11 that he was the last of the Rephaim. To show us how big he was, the Bible even describes his bed. It was made of iron and was over 13 feet long and 6 feet wide. Can you imagine a person who needs a 13-foot bed? That is twice the size of a normal man today. Then, of course, there's the most famous giant of all, Goliath of Gath. He was over 9 feet tall. He wore a coat of bronze that weighed 125 pounds, and the tip of his spear weighed 15 pounds. For 40 days, he stood in front of the Israelite army and dared anyone to fight him. He was a man of renown who used fear as his greatest weapon. These stories show us that the battle against the giants didn't end with Noah. It continued for hundreds of years. But there was a change. Before the flood, the giants ruled the whole world. After the flood, they were limited to certain areas and certain tribes. They were like the final remnants of an old, dark power. A wise quote says, "The giant's strength is in his size, but his weakness is in his heart." Even though these post-flood giants were scary, they were no longer unbeatable. God was training his people to face their fears and to realize that size does not matter when the Creator is on your side. The era of the giants was slowly coming to an end, leading up to a famous showdown between a shepherd boy and a mountain of a man. The story of the giants reaches its most famous moment with a young boy named David. While the rest of the army was shaking with fear, David looked at the giant Goliath and saw something different. He didn't see an unbeatable monster. He saw a man who was challenging the living God. David knew a secret that the giants didn't understand. He knew that physical size is nothing compared to spiritual strength. In 1 Samuel 17:45, David says to the giant, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." With one smooth stone and a simple sling, the great giant fell to the ground. This was the beginning of the end for the giants of the ancient world. This victory tells us a very important spiritual lesson for our lives today. We might not have to fight 10-foot-tall men in armor, but we all face giants in our own way. A giant can be a huge problem at school. It can be a deep fear that keeps you from trying new things. It can be a mountain of sadness or a habit that feels too big to break. Just like the Nephilim used their size to bully people, our problems try to use fear to make us feel small. They want us to feel like grasshoppers. But the story of David proves that the bigger they are, the harder they fall. When you have the Creator of the universe walking beside you, no giant is too big to be defeated. There's a powerful quote that says, "Stop telling God how big your storm is, and start telling the storm how big your God is." The Nephilim secret teaches us that there have always been dark and scary things in this world. There have always been men of renown who think they are more powerful than God. But history shows us that their power never lasts. Whether it is through a great flood or a small stone, God always has a way to protect his children. You don't need to be a giant to win a giant battle. You just need to have a heart that trusts in the one who made the giants in the first place. You are never as small as you feel, because the spirit inside you is greater than any giant in the world. As we look back at the mystery of the Nephilim, we see a story that is both strange and amazing. It is a story of a world that was pushed to the limit by creatures that weren't supposed to exist. It explains why our ancient history is full of tales of heroics and monsters. But more than that, it shows us the heart of God. He is a God of order and a God of protection. He saw the corruption and the violence of the giants, and he acted to save the human race. He wanted us to live in a world where we can walk in peace, not in fear of monsters. The Nephilim secret is a reminder that we live in a world where there is a constant battle between light and darkness, but the light always has the final word. The Bible tells us in Romans 8:31, "If God is for us, who can be against us?" This is the ultimate answer to the secret of the giants. It doesn't matter how tall they were or how many secrets they taught. They are gone, but God's truth remains. We can look at the ancient ruins and the old stories not with fear, but with wonder. They are a testimony to the fact that no matter how dark the world gets, God is always working behind the scenes to bring us back to the light. The giants are a part of our past, but they do not have to be a part of our future. So, the next time you face a problem that feels like a giant, remember the Nephilim. Remember that even the strongest and biggest beings in history were no match for the truth. Keep your head high and your heart full of faith. You are part of a story that is much bigger than any giant. You are a child of the King, and in his eyes, you are a giant slayer. A famous quote says, "God didn't remove the giants from the land just to make it easy. He kept them there to make you strong." Go forward today, knowing that the same power that defeated Goliath is living inside you. The secret is out. The giants have already lost.